Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Minding My Mental Health. I am Tenitria Williams. We are so excited to have you. You guys know what we want you to do. Go ahead and hashtag live if you are watching this live. Let us know where you are watching from. So hashtag live and let us know where you're watching from. And if you are watching the replay, hashtag replay and let us know where you are watching from. My guest and I, Miss Dr. Mia Phillips, is with me. We are talking about mental health and higher education. Before we get into the conversation, we're going to take a moment to share this broadcast to different platforms. So we're just going to take a second. Again, if you're joining us, go ahead and hashtag where you're watching from. Share this video to your page, share it to groups you are a part of, all of the fun stuff. I'm sharing it to a couple groups. We have a couple people joining us. And I'm actually going to tag you, Mia.
Okay, awesome.
There we go. Hey, Tracy, welcome. All righty. So again, welcome, Mia. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm excited about this interview. I'm excited about doing this. And so for everyone who doesn't know, the purpose of Minding My Mental Health is to bring awareness about mental health into our community, making it more of a conversation, taking away some of the stigma. So many people believe that mental health is something to be kind of tucked away. We don't talk about it very much. And I wanted this platform to show, number one, that everyone, no matter what your educational level is, your background, everyone has to deal with and take care of our mental health. And so the idea came to me to highlight professionals who are doing amazing things, because I want people to see that no matter how successful you are, you still have life happening, right? But you also have to learn how to deal with, hey, Karen, hey, Tracy, you have to learn how to navigate life in a healthy way. And so again, I want to just bring in different professions to talk about how they're navigating and taking care of their mental health. And I like to bring in some of the best I know. And so why not go with the best? We have Dr. Phillips here. So Mia, go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us your connection with higher education and what your role was when you were working in higher ed.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. So, hey, everyone. My name is Mia Phillips. I previously served as Assistant Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs, while also serving as Director of the Student Experience Center and the Founding Director of the Multicultural Center at an institution here in Arkansas. I oversaw all kinds of things, all the fun things that students get to do. So, student life, fraternity, sorority life, some scholarship programs, food pantries. So just anything you can think of, I probably had some involvement with it on the student affairs side of the house. So that's my connection. I spent about 15 years or so in higher education in various spaces, from fundraising all the way up through student affairs. So glad to be here.
We're excited to have you here. If you know of someone who is in higher education, whether that is a student or higher educational professional, go ahead and tag them now. So Mia, tell us from your experience, what were some of the, are you frozen? There you go. Are you with
there
me?
I am. Okay. Yeah, I'm here.
What would you say are some of the bigger stressors that are facing higher education professionals?
For professionals, I think it's a combination of unrealistic expectations, the changing landscape just of the world in general, and just having to do more with less, like everyone else feels like they're doing, right, in their respective professions. I think that higher professionals have challenges because it's more of a 24/7 job. Because if you're working on a campus with students, most likely there's a residential piece. And so that means they're residing with you, no matter if it's 500 or 5,000. That brings its own set of challenges. And so you are now responsible for the actions of actual adults, which is challenging to manage.
That's interesting.
It's different, right? When it's K through 12, there's parental involvement, hopefully, and some other channels there. But once they become adults and enter your campus through whatever mechanism, it's a little bit more challenging because they have a lot more free will, if you will. So just trying to make sure that professionals are able to manage those expectations from the students, from their universities or colleges, from parents, alumni, funders. There's all these competing priorities and expectations, and sometimes they collide, and it's difficult to navigate.
Yeah. So what are the common things that you're seeing with students? Like you said, they're young adults now, so it's not just, oh, your parents should take care of this. When professionals start to see maybe this student is dealing with addiction, you're seeing signs of depression, anxiety, is there encouragement from staff from your experience, or is it kind of we're going to let them kind of navigate themselves?
It's a little bit of both. And as of late, I would say in the last 5 to 7 years, especially post, if you can call it post pandemic, I think there's more of a push for students getting assistance in whatever ways that looks like. So if it is just needing to connect with a mental health professional on campus, I see staff all the time. Hey, let me walk you over. Let's go meet counselor X, Y, and Z, to, hey, this is a more long-term issue. Let's figure out what services you may need. But I think also, even when it's not a mental health issue directly, I think the mental health issues come because of the life challenges that students are experiencing. College, especially if you're a traditional student between the ages of 18 and 25, let's say, it's a challenging time in your life because your identity is like all over the place. You're trying to figure things out. There's all these things coming at you, and it's hard to make sense of everything. And so it's easy to get lost. It's easy to lose yourself trying to figure out who you want to be. And then there's a pressure. Well, what are you going to do with your life? I mean, think about how crazy that is. At 18, you're asking someone to determine what they want to do with the rest of their life. And so just the pressures of feeling like they have to perform, they can't mess up, can't let their family down. I've got to figure out how to pay for school. That's a stressor in and of itself.
Yes.
And so I think there is a push for assistance, and there are all kinds of services, but there's only so many resources. And so you run into an issue of more students needing more than what you're able to provide.
Okay. What about from, I guess, the perspective of the staff? When you see colleagues who may be going through a divorce, sick parents, heck, just like you were saying, financial struggles, those types of things, and they're really stressed out. Is it an encouraged thing amongst the staff to encourage people, hey, take care of yourself, or does it seem to be more of the grind kind of culture?
It is definitely a grind culture, but I think from the institution's perspective, it's like, well, we have to get this done, but we do want you to be okay, but we still need you to get this done. And so I felt like I saw a lot of people feeling like, well, I know I need to get help, but I don't have time. And there's this myth that kind of permeates that if I don't do it, it won't get done. And so I see staff members in particular, and faculty as well, but staff in particular, who will put themselves on the back burner day after day after day because there's a student that has a need. There's always an emergency. There's always a fire to put out. And you've often got to come up with creative solutions to do those things. I know staff right now, if a student needed a book, they're going to go in their own pocket because it's just easier to pay for that book. I know I used to get phone calls 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, students at the hospital, something happened at a party that wasn't supposed to be happening. And so there's this constant around the clock grind and the expectation that it just gets handled. And so, yes, you might sit in a seminar that says, hey, you need to take care of your mental health, and here's some tips and tools, and we have these resources. But when do you actually have the time to utilize them?
So Mia, what can we do to help, or what can shift that? I don't know if we could shift the culture, right? But how do you make sure that the kids are okay and the professionals are okay? Like what feedback or advice would you give to someone? Do you say, sometimes you may not get to answer that call, or do you say, no, you always need to answer that call? And how do you balance that? Because that's a struggle.
It is. It is. And I think that it's twofold. So, one, we have to empower students to be able to solve some things for themselves. So, a
Mm,
lot of calls that we get, a lot of emails that we get, a lot of random pop up visits that we would get were things that the student could actually navigate themselves. They just didn't know where to go, perhaps because we didn't do a
mm,
good job of explaining or providing clear information. And then sometimes there are legitimate emergencies, right?
right.
And so as an individual, I had to set boundaries for myself and for my staff so that they didn't feel like, well, I got to answer this or I'm going to get in trouble or I got to figure this
Mhm.
out. And so it goes back to institutions being intentional about taking care of their people. I'm a firm believer that if an institution will take care of their staff and faculty, the students will be taken care of because nobody
Mm,
signs up to work in higher ed to get rich. That's just not it's just not happening. And so people are there because they genuinely care about helping students get from point A to point B, whatever that looks like. And so if you give them things like flexible work environments where they can, leave for a couple of hours and take their kid to the doctor and not worry about, oh, am I going to have to make this 2 hours up? Knowing full well that they probably worked 12 hours the day before. Um,
mm,
you know, making sure that even let's say you don't have the finances to give raises every year, what can an institution do to show their appreciation for the
right.
extreme and hard work that these folks put in day after day? So I think more or less, if institutions would focus on their faculty and staff and their well-being and what they need, the student piece will take care of itself.
So would you say that there needs to be more of a connection between, like, and I know most college campuses have a counseling center, CAPS, or something where there are counselors. I often know a lot of students don't know about that.
Nope.
Like, like literally, you go, they're like, really? I didn't know there was a place where we could go and get counseling. And maybe that's something that administrators could connect more with those services so that people can have go somewhere, so they're building their own resource or their own sense of independence where they're not having to call staff as much
Yes.
for, you know, for those things that maybe they could figure out themselves.
And then some of that though too is the relationship that's established.
Yeah.
So, I think we can probably all think of a teacher and a staff member, a faculty,
Yeah.
somebody that we were just like, that was my person, right? And so the thing is, you can't be that person to every student. And so learning to redirect students to appropriate offices when possible and not taking on the burden of, oh my gosh, I've got to fix this for them. I think a lot of higher professionals are fixers by nature. And so that just gets multiplied when you're working with the student because you care. You care so
Yeah.
much because you understand that if the student can just get over this hurdle to get to this goal, it's life changing for them. And so, I think making sure, like you said, to connect those students with all of the resources. And just because we
Mhm.
told them at orientation doesn't
Right.
mean that they're going
You
to
don't remember
remember.
that stuff.
Students, they're bombarded with information and they need to be reminded every semester that, hey, here
Mhm.
are the things. Because it's not just counseling, it's most have a fitness center,
Yeah.
um, some type of medical services, where they can at least make sure that if they have a cold, a headache, something minor, they can get treated on campus and you're paying for it already. So
Right.
you need to utilize all of the
Utilize.
services that
Mhm.
you're already paying for.
So Dr. Phillips, sorry. What would you say are some of the trends in higher ed that seem to be more detrimental to students? Or maybe even to the staff as far as their mental health. And it could be like the trend to always be available for a student. If that is, if that's a trend or if that's the culture, that could be dangerous
Yeah.
to some degree.
I think the trend that retention is everyone's responsibility to the point that if we don't retain at a certain level, we lose funding is
Mm,
dangerous because then it puts pressure from every corner on the institution to perform. And I think, sometimes we forget that maybe a student doesn't graduate, but that student still learned. That student still had an experience. Yes, graduation is the ultimate goal, but if a student takes 2 years of college and doesn't quite finish, but is still able to help change the trajectory of their life for them and their family, that's still a win. And there's not really a reward for that. And so it's very much a performance-based system. And so when that is the case, you see a lot of, that's what kind of contributes to the grind, right? So for staff, it's like, well, what can I do other than go and sit and take the class for the student? Because at this point, we're running out of ideas. And then for students, it's the same thing. It's, well, you got to get out of here in 4 years, when all the data tells us that's not realistic. And this trend to push everybody into STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math is wonderful for people who are interested in that and good at it. If that were me, I listen, it wasn't happening. Don't give me letters and numbers together. I'm okay with separate, right? And so this idea that if you do these things, yes, we know that some majors have better paying jobs at the end and all of that, but let's not lose sight of the goal of higher education. It's not just about degree attainment and career. There is a transformation that happens simply by learning and being exposed to different things. And so the more that we can remember that, I think the better off and the less pressure there is. So if you can tell a student, hey, if you graduate in 4.5 years, you graduated. If it takes you 10 years, you still got it done. So I think while it is ideal for them to get in and get out because of debt and other things, let's just celebrate the progress more so than the credential all the time.
I like that. What can you share about a time where work was your primary stressor?
Oh, Lord. I think for me, the time where work was the most stressful was when I felt, and this had nothing to do with the institution, this was me, when I felt I had to prove my worth and value. So I overworked myself. So it was when I was in that space. So it probably crossed a number of roles, but there's a reward for doing good work, and it's more work. And I didn't realize that. It is not always promotion. It is not always more money. And so I was the most stressed because I was trying to prove that, hey, I can do this and I need to be at this table and I need to be, in this conversation. And so that's when I was the most stressed. When I realized that I was brilliant and talented, regardless of, who thought I was able to chill out a lot more and just do my job and do a good job because I knew that God had placed me there for a reason. And so regardless of who valued that or not, I was able to just kind of chill out. So that was when I was actually the most stressed. It was me.
So where did that stress come? Was that just internal? Where did that pressure come from? And then how did you navigate to get to that place of a more healthy perspective?
So it came from a number of places. One being a young Black female in a traditionally white male space. I felt like I had to overperform, like I had to be, better than excellent. And so I was like, okay, if you're here at 7, I'm here at 6:30. If you're here till 6, I'm here till 6:45. Like, if you send an email, I'm gonna show you, right? If you're sending emails at 7:00, I'm sending emails at 10:00, as if that had anything to do with the quality of what I was doing, right? And so that kind of mentality that if you're visible and doing a lot, then you must be, doing good. And then again, just being in this space of always walking into rooms and being the only one, feeling like I had to carry my gender and my race on my shoulders to represent all Black people and all women and all young people, right? And feeling like I couldn't mess up. I had to be on point. Perfectionism was just like at an all-time high for me. And so I was thankfully able to fall into a wonderful community of sisters. And following Pastor Sean Strickland and participating in Soul Shift and really being able to release all of that. And again, get to, at the end of the day, God wants me here. I'm doing his work. It's not even about y'all, me, or anybody else. It's about doing what he needs me to do. And so again, once I was able to get to that space through the support and teaching of this community, I was good, and I am good because I approach my work much differently now.
Yeah, I love that. I just want to kind of go back and reiterate some of those nuggets you dropped. Number one, this idea that you have to be like on top of your game, on 10 at all times, because of the fact that you are not like everyone else in the room. I think that's something that's particularly, I think African Americans hear this. It's actually told directly. It's not always an indirect thing. Sometimes it's a direct, you have to be better. You have to be, your character has to be impeccable. This has to be this way. And that is a lot of pressure. And we can go in and overwork. The other thing you said was, I have to be visible. So not just doing the work in an excellent manner, but they need to see me doing the work in an excellent manner. Pastor Strickland just put out, we were told you have to work twice as hard and to be just as good, right? Mm-hmm. And so think about if you're under that type of pressure constantly, my presentation has to have every T crossed, every I dotted, all of those types of things, right? It's a lot of stress. It's a lot of pressure, but then you still also want to be excellent, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. It is that stress. I'm glad you navigated. Can you give us some specific tools or mindset shifts that you had to make to get to that place?
Yes. And it's so interesting because I would hear people say things like, or see the memes on Facebook, right? That, you'll work for your job and something happened to you and they'll have your job posted before your obituary. Mm-hmm. And you be like, man, that's crazy. But I actually saw that happen. And that was kind of the thing that did it for me. I watched a gentleman pass away, loved across the campus. And within the week, they had an interim and had already begun the search. And it wasn't that the institution wasn't sorry that he was gone and it wasn't a big loss, but the institution's responsibility is to take care of the institution. Mm-hmm. So I realized then that I had to take care of me, like having to constantly choose between myself and the institution. I saw where the institution stood. It was very clear, right?
Yeah.
So it was that, and coupled with the fact, again, that I had to stop ascribing my value to the work that I produced and their feedback of that work. So I had to know that I was going to show up. Like, I'm going to do a good job because I'm doing things as unto the Lord. Again, this ain't about me, them, anybody else. It's about me doing what I knew God needed me to do. So I'm going to do a good job. And just constantly reminding myself that, despite any situation that happened, whether the feedback wasn't what I thought it should be, or whether my idea got accepted or not, or whether I was invited to the table or not, I was still valuable. I had, everything. I had done everything I was supposed to do. I served the people that I was supposed to serve with excellence and to the best of my ability. Yeah. And that had to be enough. And so I had to finally realize that me being Mia was simply enough.
I love that. Now, you also said something that was really good. You disconnected your value from their feedback. And I think that's, again, we're talking mental health here. You have to learn how to not live for the validation of everybody talking, because it will drive you if that's your only source of validation from people saying that. And you can look throughout history how fickle the world can be. Literally 1 minute you are the number one choice, and the next minute no one cares about you, or you are the villain in everybody's story, right? And so I think that's super important that you said, I'm going to show up and I'm going to present myself in an excellent manner. How they take that is on them. I can't be responsible for how they're seeing that. Again, y'all let me know in the comments what you're pulling from this. If you have any questions for Dr. Phillips, let us know in the comment section. Yeah, I'm valuable before I showed up, when I'm there, and when I leave. Absolutely. And you also said something that I think a lot of people hear, but I want us to really get it. Yes, Karen, from Hosanna to crucify him. Absolutely. So what happens is, you said the institution's going to take care of themselves, and that is with your any job. That those jobs, yeah, they're going to take care of themselves. They're going to do what's best for the bottom line for, you know, and so it is very important that we do the same thing. I just think that's a point that we can't really stress enough, that because so many people are literally not taking any vacation, not doing
Nope.
any kind of self-care, because they're saying I'm the only person, which I think is a somewhat of pride, thinking I'm the only person that can do that.
It
And like you
is.
said, if you're gone, they're going to find somebody to fill that spot really quickly, and the show continues to go. So recognize your need to rest and your need to take care of yourself.
Yes.
Let's talk a little. You actually kind of navigated us through this talking about you, right?
Mhm.
So tell us about how you deal with the demands of your career, or at that time specifically, with the demands of your career and your wife, your mom. You do things in your community, you're involved in your church, like all of those things. How did you start to learn how to kind of navigate that?
So I think the first thing again was a shift in mindset, right? And getting the information and constantly being told that, hey, again, you have value outside of this, and this can't be your life. I mean, it
Mhm.
can't. That's your thing, cool. But like you said, I've got kids and they're growing up, and the jobs will be there, but they're only going to be kids for so long, right? And they're going to go on and do great things in their own lives. And once they're gone, I need my husband. We got to live with each other. So,
Right.
we got to figure this out. Right. And so making sure that when I did need to be at work, that, okay, guys, listen, the beginnings and ends of semesters in particular in higher ed are just crazy nuts, right? It's literally 12, 15-hour days. You're there at 5 a.m. setting up, blowing up balloons. At midnight, you're breaking down tables, setting up for the next thing. Like, it's just what it is. And so I would explain, hey, mommy's going to be out a little bit more than normal. We're going to have to,
Mhm.
make arrangements, clearly communicating, right? But then when that was over, here are my PTO days. I'm gonna be out. And making sure that my staff do the same, right? So I had to
Mhm.
lead by example. But then if I knew, for example, that there was a time where we had a late program, I'm not saying you got to be back here at 8 o'clock in the morning. That's crazy, right?
Right.
So doing that balance for myself, but then also allowing those that I led to do that as well. And then again, taking the time. Do not be the person that's trying to figure out how they can donate your extra leave to the catastrophic leave bank, and you still got to be forced. Like, that is never going to be my testimony. That is not my goal. I am going to take my days because that's what they're there for, to recharge. And learning to break up with the lie that I would get caught up. There is no such thing in higher ed. There is always something to improve upon. There's always
Mhm.
something extra to do. There's going to always be a student that you could pour more into or do something for. So you have to just get to a stopping point. My dad used to say that all the time. You won't be caught up, but you can get to a stopping point. And so you meet your deadlines and you take a break because it'll be there Monday or the
Mhm.
next week when you get back. Like, taking the time, go to the doctor. I cannot tell you how many doctor's appointments I canceled. Like, oh, I got to
Mhm.
be in a meeting, or I can't miss this particular event. Yes, you can. You can. And I started looking at it from the perspective of, if I died today, and Lord, that is not what we're saying, but if I died today, they would figure it out. If I was in the
Mhm.
hospital in a coma and unable to sign this paperwork, they would find somebody else to sign it or to push approve in the system,
Right.
right? So, and the student would, if the student needed a ride to work and I didn't answer my phone, they would find another way to get there. Those types of conversations were the things that I had to say to myself and walk myself through these scenarios. Like, okay, I'm feeling like if I don't do this, it won't get done. Well, let's just talk through that. Let's see how
Right.
realistic that actually is not. And so once I began to practice it, and it was hard, I'm not going to sit here and say like I just did it overnight. It took some time because I had been this way for so long.
Mhm.
had been wired this way and mentored in some instances to be this way. But once I started really being intentional about, okay, am I the person that has to do this, or do I think I am, or do I really just want to? And so those are the conversations that I was having with myself. And then now it's like, okay, I'm going to be off. I'll see y'all when I get back. I'm not checking email. I'm not answering no text messages, the phone, none of it. So it's an intentional mindset that you have to work toward. And now I will also say that I'm saying these things now, but I also recognize that some people work in spaces where this is harder to do than it should be. And so I want to fully, acknowledge that some institutions do not have a culture where this is feasible. And I would say to those people that you should look at going somewhere else. If you were looking and trying to figure out if you should consider other opportunities, yes, you absolutely should. Absolutely, emphatically.
Yeah, you said something that was important. You said I even mentored to kind of believe this, right? Like to work, right? And so I think it's really important when you start thinking about these types of cultures are passed along, because if it worked for your mentor and they're saying this is how I got into this position, this is how you have to get into this position, and you start passing those things along, how did you start to break away from, like, how did you start to say I need different types of feedback?
I think for me, I didn't realize this until, again, getting good information and teaching. But one of the things and Pastor Strick mentioned in the comments, this God complex, and seeing all of the people that we idolize, thinking that they were working really, really hard. So thinking that I had to be the only one to do it. If I wanted to be like the people that I saw were successful, then I had to do it exactly like them. And feeling like if I didn't do a good job, that my livelihood was at stake.
That's a big one.
That is a huge one, because you're already underpaid, right? I would say 95%, if you talk to 95% of people in higher ed right now, they say, yes, a bit of a struggle to pay my bills, even with what I'm making.
Jeez.
And I think people recognize that for K-12, but it's the same for higher ed. It's just, you make a little bit more, but you had to get a higher degree to get that. So when you got people that are master's and doctoral level educated people making $56,000, and supervising staffs and all that, so I had to break away from just all of the things, and I had to trust God, like, just being flat honest. Like, there's really no other way for me other than to trust God and know that as long as I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, he's going to take care of me. So, I mean, it's really a mindset of not being afraid to move how you need to move, and not being so loyal to the point where it's to your detriment. And it really is a mindset. It's tough. And I say that because I understand, because I was in it so long. Like, it's so hard because you care so much and you want to do a good job. But at the end of the day, you have to do what's best for you.
How do we, and Pastor Strickland is on here, and he taught me, us people, me as well, like, jobs aren't they're not loyal to us, right? So many times we have our loyalty to the job, but they're not always loyal to us. How do we shift, or I don't even know what can be done, because you're right, to keep good professionals in higher education, in K through 12, the ones who genuinely care and are good at their job, they're not getting paid what needs to be paid, and they're having to do, like you were saying, you can have the highest of credentials, and I've seen it when I worked as a GA. I saw high level positions blowing up balloons. I saw the person whose face is out front setting up chairs, right? And so I know there is definitely like a servant leadership perspective to that, but how do you keep people motivated to stay in this profession, and still take care of themselves and get what they need?
You have to provide them the space to be human, and you have to provide them the space to make a mistake and admit that they're not on today or that they're off balance.
Mm-hmm.
So, if your culture is such that people feel like they can't miss because, oh, I might get fired, or Sally's going to be, gunning for my job, or whatever that looks like, the institution has to let the staff know that they care. And a lot of that is, let's reevaluate where we're spending money and see where can we use that to give it to people, even if it's a one-time bonus. And again, recognizing that the people on the ground are the ones who should have the most input, in my opinion, on how things should run. So decisions that are top down, that impact the day-to-day and how people do things without input, that's a dangerous space, because then it feels like, well, I really am just a cog in the wheel, and I don't have any autonomy, and my lived experience isn't valuable. So if you're telling me I have to do something, and I'm telling you all the reasons why this is a bad idea and this won't work how you think it is, and you still say I do it this way anyway, that's very demeaning. And it's disheartening. And so I see a lot of times where well-meaning people, I don't think people sitting around saying, how can we be rude to people today?
Right.
How can we destroy people's self-esteem and
I hope not.
How can we make these people quit today? That's not the conversation in the meeting. So I think well-meaning people are trying to do what's right without knowing what it really takes to make it happen. I can think of an instance where I was asked to host a very, very, very large event, and I was given probably 2 months notice, not enough budget, and I had no direction. They were like, well, we want to do this. Here's some money, figure it out. And I was like, okay, so number 1 through 56, this is not gonna happen, and here's why. Now I was in a different place because I'm like, no, we're not doing this, and here's why. But I was in a position to do that. So it all goes back to taking care of your people. When you look at outside of higher ed, any organization that is able to communicate either monetarily or just in culture to their employees, their volunteers, whomever, that they care about them first and foremost, you will find higher employee retention. You will find higher morale. It's just kind of a basic thing that we've overcomplicated.
So Mia, tell us about a time when you personally had to deal with mental health struggles. And by mental health, again, we don't necessarily mean you had a diagnosis and you had to be on medication type of thing. Sometimes it's just overly stressed, or some high anxiety or stress, depression, those types of things. And tell us about that and how you navigated through that time.
Sure. So I can actually tell two. One from when I worked in higher ed, and that's brief. So it was literally just stress. I had just come through the height of the pandemic. So we were all trying to pivot, figure out how to serve students virtually, how to do programming online. There was no instruction manual for this at all. There was no class that we took that prepared us for this. There was nothing. So we were literally building that plane in the air. And so doing that, having to navigate and manage my own, I don't want to call it anxiety, but own concern about the pandemic, right? Because I'm a human being too. I'm susceptible to this disease, and just like everybody else. And so trying to manage that, trying to do all of this while having children here who were trying to still learn, it was a lot. And I thought that I was handling it okay. I thought I was using my tools. But it just got too heavy. And then that coupled with some other things, I just kind of crashed. And so I had to step away for about a month. I had to take a break. And I was just like, either I take a break, like I was walking into the office and my chest would just be tight, like an elephant was sitting on it. It was just rough. So work through that. But in college, and I think this is one of the reasons why I was so passionate about this, for students, but in college, I actually dealt with my own issues with depression and suicidal ideation my sophomore year, because of all the things that we've talked about, trying to be perfect and not mess up, and feeling the weight of getting out and bringing everybody with me, and trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, and all of this at the age of 19 at this point.
Right.
So it was just a dark period. I realized I I was sleeping about 18 hours a day,
Mm.
while still trying to go to class. And so it was to the point, like, I stopped going to class because I was sleeping all the time. And then felt worse because now my grades are bad. I'm
Right.
losing my scholarship. And so things just started snowballing, and I didn't know how to say anything. I didn't want to let anybody down. And so I
Mhm.
actually, one weekend, was going to commit suicide. And thankfully, God sent his angels to prevent that from happening. And I'm here. But, that's the kind of weight
Yeah.
that students are under. And so I will make a post about midterm, because we know on campuses, that a lot of times we see suicide attempts spike during midterms because students
Mhm.
are stressed through the roof, because to them, that
That's
grade
everything. Yeah.
is everything. It is their life, or so they think it is, right? If I don't make this A, I'm not going to get into med school, then my life is going to be over. Stuff like that. And so I make a post like, hey, if you know a college student, send them a cash app, send them an encouraging word.
Mhm.
When they come home from school, if their grades are not good, don't start fussing. Ask them, how can you support them? Because no
Mm.
child is sitting
That's
like
good.
saying, I want to mess up and flunk out of school, right? That's not it. Get to the root of it. And so I'm grateful that I had a support system of people that would listen to me once I decided to finally talk,
Right.
right? And get the help that I needed. But it's a lot. And it's worse now. That was years ago. It's worse now. It's just, I can't tell you. I could talk for hours about some of the challenges, from homelessness. Like, you want me to go
Mhm.
to school and I slept outside, maybe on campus in the parking lot last night, and you mad because I'm late to class in 5 minutes? Like, what? Like,
Right.
that type of stuff. So yeah, it's a lot, and we need to be mindful, of how we interact with college students, and figure out how to best support them rather than further exasperating this
Mhm.
performance mentality.
Mia, let me ask you this, and if you don't have to answer this, but as you stepped away from this time, you said for about a month, were you able to get like doctor's approval, or was this I'm just doing it regardless, or did you say, hey, I'm going to go get what do you call, like, leave of absence kind of thing?
Yes. Because I had not been taking off, I had enough PTO to get me through a month. And so I coupled that with FMLA. So
Okay.
you can use FMLA, for mental health challenges. So please know that that is a resource. So anybody that is eligible for FMLA in any other way, I forget what the specs are, but you can look them up online. Now, keep in mind, FMLA does not like protect, or pay you rather,
Hey,
but
right.
it does protect you, from being fired. But yeah, I went to my doctor and I said, I am not well. And I couldn't
Hmm.
really even articulate what it was. I was like, I'm having some physical things and I don't know why. I don't like going to my job anymore, which is strange for me. Like, I'm
Hmm.
not well. And so he was like, you need to take a break. And I was like, but he was like, no. And then I came up with but, and he was like, but no. He let me talk. And I was like,
I'm glad you had a good doctor.
me too, right? And he was like, no. And so, and that really solidified for me that, you know what, they're struggling a little bit at first, but they figured it out. They did.
Yeah. So y'all go ahead and give some hearts, some whatever, for Mia still being here, for Mia getting the help she needs, for her dropping all of this good information, right? So I think it's so important because people often think that they have to just push through those times, and they identify that as, I should, and I can't stand the shoulds. I should
Mm-hmm.
be able to handle this. And there are moments where you go, this is just a lot, and
Yeah.
it's too much. But I also wanted people to know that there is that FMLA, there is that, and some people say I can't afford it. Sometimes there are even short term, depending on
Short-term
what's going on, there
disability.
may be short term disability. I'm not claiming to know all of the ins and outs, but talk to somebody to find out what those resources are if you are at that point, right?
Right.
I've had people to come in and literally they're like, I don't like my boss. Can you fill out some paperwork? And I'm like, no, you have to learn some problem
Some
solving skills. I'm not
tools
filling
or
out
something.
this. You're fine. But then there are other people. What's really interesting is that there will be other people who literally, I'm going, you're not okay. And they're like, I can make it.
I'm
Like,
good. I just
no. What we need you to do is to not go into work for a while and to heal and be in a good place, right? And so,
Mhm.
yes, there will be people that try to take advantage. That's out there. But if
Right.
you are a person that's like Mia said, I'm not in a good place, I'm not okay, or I'm about to be in a place where I'm not okay. Right now, I'm making it. Do what you need to do to take care of yourself. And I'm glad you brought that up because I was like, I'm wondering if she was able to use FMLA or any type
Mhm.
of leave or disability or whatever. And
Yes.
that's what
Yeah.
it's there for, to help you.
Yes. And EAPs,
Mm-hmm.
schedule it and keep the appointment. Like, please take care of yourself because, yeah, okay, let's say you do have to take a month off with no pay. That would be challenging. I understand that. But if you have a heart attack and die from stress, then it'll all be a moot point anyway.
Right.
So you have to really have these honest conversations with yourself and say, okay, yes, this may be a temporary discomfort or inconvenience,
Mm-hmm.
but in the long run, this will benefit me. Because that period for me was a game changer.
Yeah.
Yes, Pastor Rick.
Pastor
Yes.
Edwin just said men get told to just suck it up and be a man.
Yeah.
And I think that's super important that we understand from the male and female perspective of
Mhm.
it's different, but it's a lot of the same pressure. And men are often just told, hey, that's what we have to do. That's what you
Right.
have to do. No, you can get help. It's okay. It doesn't make you less of a man because you need to step away. It doesn't make you
Absolutely.
less of a man at all. And so again, very important that we begin to understand those things, that we're not just meant to keep going. So I'm glad. I was one of the questions I was going to ask you, if you said yes, was how did it show up? And you said literally you're walking into work and you feel this heavy pressure. Um, it
And
could
that's
be
how I
lack
knew it
of
was off.
focus.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I knew it was off because when I say I loved what I did, I mean I would look forward to waking up like, yes, let me get to work. Even if it was a long day, it didn't feel like work.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I was like, wait a minute, I don't want to talk to y'all today. Like, what is really going on? And it was just, again, it wasn't just one thing, because I think
Mm-hmm.
sometimes people think, oh, if I had one big thing, then obviously that would
Right.
explain it. But it was just a bunch of little things that had compounded. And if you're not careful, it will explode. And
Mm-hmm.
you'll be looking like, well, what happened? And so, I think paying attention to those signs, I think like you were about to say, lack of focus, uh,
Mm-hmm.
lack of engagement, and you don't enjoy the things that you normally enjoy, and just those physical cues, right? I was
Yeah.
just tired for no
Yeah.
reason.
And people don't recognize you literally just described what depression feels like.
Yeah,
Lack of
yeah.
focus, irritability, lack of motivation, lack of energy,
Mhm,
sleep disturbance, all of those things. And you go, when you
mhm.
describe it to someone who hears that all the time, they go, oh, you're anxious, oh, you're depressed. And you're like, oh, is that what that is?
That's
Yes,
what
that's
it
what
is.
that is. And it's okay to reach out and get help. And it doesn't mean that you're not successful at what you're doing, and it doesn't mean you didn't have what it takes,
Right.
um to do that. Was there any resistance to you? You've talked about kind of having, thankfully you're a former perfectionist, but that you're a high achiever person who always wants to get it right. Was there a lot of resistance for you to say, yeah, I gotta step away, I can't keep doing this?
Thankfully, there wasn't. My supervisor at the time was very understanding and actually did care about me, so that
Mhm.
made a big difference. I was very fortunate in that, and I had made up my mind I didn't care anyway, so there was that. But because again, I was finally at the point where I was like, I'm going to choose me. And
Mhm.
so thankfully there wasn't, again, it was a little bumpy at first trying to figure some things out, because for me it was like I went to the doctor that day and he was like, yeah, you're not going back for a month. So I didn't even get a chance to like prepare to be out, if that makes sense. And so it was a little rocky, but again, they figured it out. Everybody was supportive. I didn't have a bunch of people saying, well, what happened? All of that.
Mhm.
And so and I was very open with my team. I was like, listen, this is what's going on, because I wanted them to know that it was okay for them as well.
Yeah.
So
Y'all put that in the comment section. They'll figure it out.
they
Because
will.
they will. And the same thing is really true even with your family to some degree, right?
Mhm.
You know, sometimes
Mhm.
we run ourselves with family. Like I got to get my kid here,
Uh-huh.
or
You can pick up the
grandma
phone.
can take them,
Mhm.
or they can miss that. Like they will figure it out. And it's really important that we do recognize that our self-care is super important.
Yeah.
Mia, we got 10 minutes. I want people to
Okay.
know what you've got going on, if there's a way to connect with you, any announcements, or again, any upcoming things that you have prepared.
Sure. So you can follow me on Facebook at Mia Danielle Maria. That's my government name, pretty much. And then also on Instagram at DocMiaGP6. And then you can also follow my business page, which is MDM Strategic Solutions. And so what I do in my free time is provide strategy solutions for nonprofits, for churches, and for colleges and universities. So any program that you want to start or perhaps revamp, I come in and help you figure out how to do that, so that you're not stuck and wasting time spinning your wheels trying to figure stuff out. I help you connect all the pieces so that you can serve who you want to serve effectively. So you can reach out to me at any of those places. Also for parents of college students, if you have questions, if you would like to know how to better support your college student, please reach out to me. I do have some information that I would be able to share with you to help you know which questions to ask, what forms you may need to fill out, or permissions you may need your student to grant you in order to be able to support them through their journey as well. That is, they're pretty much the same regardless of which campus. So I will be glad to help you navigate that process. So again, just reach out and let me know.
Does anyone have any questions for Dr. Phillips? Again, Mia, thank you so much. You gave us some really, really good information. You're frozen. Up there you go. I knew you would bring the heat, and you did. I appreciate you. I want to let everybody know, if you have not already registered, it is time again for another Minding My Mental Health challenge.
Ooh.
So we are doing a 7-day Minding My Mental Health challenge. You can register. Reach out to me. I will send the link. You can go to my page. It is 7 days. I give you a task every day, like an assignment for you to go, and it may be various things, from learning to set up boundaries, learning how to communicate effectively, those types of things. Again, it's only $15. I know a couple people here actually signed up for the challenge before. So if you've had great experiences, go ahead and tell people they need to sign up for the challenge today. Don't wait. It's going to start August the 11th. For 7 days, we're going to be doing this. And what are we doing? We are simply learning, getting insight to ourselves so that we can better take care of ourselves, so that we can have more tools. So that is what I've got going on. If you guys have any questions, everybody's saying, Mia, great interview. You did an amazing job. I knew you would. I appreciate you. I think some of the highlights were, just that idea of taking care of yourself and not allowing what people will think of you, not allowing your need to be perfect, not allowing the God complex to overtake your life. So if you were in higher ed, or if you know of someone who is in higher ed and maybe they were busy during this time, go ahead and tag them so that they can come back and watch the replay. Very powerful, great information. If you guys have questions, again, let us know. Next week, join us right back here every Thursday at 12 o'clock Central Standard Time. Next week, we're going to be doing part 2 of mental health and singleness. So I have Julie Husbands. She joined me, I think, 2 weeks ago, and we did a session about singleness. And we are coming back because after that show, we talked and we talked and we talked after that. And I said, Julie, I think we need to have a part 2 because we've been on here for a minute now. So we're coming back with part 2. So if you know of someone who's single, or you just want to come back, because it's always good information, even if you're not single, right? Join us right here every Thursday at 12 p.m. Go, and if you have not liked the page on YouTube, it's Tenetria Williams. Go ahead and do that. Each broadcast is broadcast over on YouTube as well. Thank you, Mia. Y'all give Mia some hearts, give her some fire. Thank you for joining. Share this video to your story, to groups you are a part of, so that people can catch the replay. Thank you guys, and we will talk to you later. Bye-bye.